Hello, we are live. And yes, I have just noticed that my untidy door with my gym bag is in the background. I thought I started that, but never mind. These are the challenges of working from home. It's wonderful to see so many people joining us. Particularly great to see names that maybe I'm not knocking around with all the time. So hello to Philippa there from Kirklees. It's been a while, my friend. Lovely to see Helen, lovely to see Jenny, and lovely to see everyone else here too. We've got Joss on the chat. So right away, feel free to be throwing your questions into the chat. Hiya, Peter. Throwing your questions into the chat, and Joss will pick up anything she can. Anything she can't, she will, hand over to me and Christina. But we're all here to find out about APConnect Year 4, which is even bigger, even brighter than last year. And we've learned so much in the last year from APs, from working with APs. And Christina, I'm just going to hand over to you. So this is Dr. Christina Donovan, FE Trust Researcher Extraordinaire, and she's going to talk to us about the co-evaluation project. So buckle up, everybody.
Oh, God, thanks, Lou. So hopefully everyone can see what I can see right now. So this is just our kind of summary of the work that we were doing in year 3, really. And what was special about year 3 was that it was the first time that we had an internal kind of evaluation strand where we could really track what impact the APConnect program was having upon participants in a way that was really meaningful, both to the participants on the program, but also to the designers, the facilitators, and the leads on the program itself. And so our starting point was the provocation provided by Joss, really, which was for year 3 to create conditions to support all. So for APs to be able to create those conditions within their organisations. And what we wanted to do was understand then how conditions shape practice and what conditions created fertile ground for advanced practitioners to undertake their work. And so this lent itself really to co-production. And hopefully I'm going to get into my presentation now. There we go. So this lent itself to co-production because involving all stakeholders in the evaluation process was really important from the beginning to be embedded into the research design. And what that allowed us to do was to embed our work within the aims and aspirations of advanced practitioners themselves, rather than us as evaluators maybe assuming what APs want and need. So it was intentionally designed to complement the communities of practice model, which is continuing into year 4, and it was implemented as part of a strand on the programme. So a core principle of the approach, just to give you an idea of how we went about going about to do the research, was to flatten hierarchical relations. So we brought together a team of 12 co-evaluators, which was formed of advanced practitioners who are participating in the program across constellations B and C, as well as program designers and facilitators. And with the idea behind the approach that we undertook was that we could by flattening the hierarchy and the power relations between participants, we could uncover new ways of knowing, and we can remove any inhibitors to transformational change. So the findings, it means that the findings emerge from a deep understanding of context that the participants bring with them. So we understand that advanced practitioners who participate in the APConnect program come from a very diverse range of adult education, community and further education contexts. And so it was really important to get the perspective of each of those different pockets of the sector through the work that we were doing. So what we hope that we're presenting to you today is something which is rooted in the stakeholders' values, and therefore it carries meaning to both those participants who took part in the program, but also for future participants. And it meant that the design going forward for the year 4 version of the program was informed by those that very deep understanding of participant experiences. So as part of the co-evaluation, we collectively produced the aims and aspirations of the programme. And when we were setting those aims and aspirations, and we had a lot of very long and important conversations about what values were important to advanced practitioners. And what emerged from that conversation was that trust was needed to allow them to take full ownership of their role. And that APs felt that a positive culture change was necessary for them to be seen as valuable in their role as well. And so there was a sense that we needed to cultivate some kind of work which allowed a paradigm shift to take place away from how they felt that they were seen in terms of their role within their organizations, and more towards becoming effective agents of change within their context. So away from more performative discourses, which might put the AP within a very narrow constraints in terms of their role. So they felt that their engagement with the community of practice for year 3 should support them to develop the skills needed to affect change within their organisation within and across organisational perspectives, and develop the confidence that they need to challenge and change institutional practices via engagement with evidence-based practice. So based on that aspiration, or these sets of needs that were discussed, we identified that for APs to be able to support all, the community of practice needs to be able to support APs to become affirmative change agents in their context. So we were really interested in the conditions that might shape that. So our research question became, how does the community of practice support APs to navigate the challenges they encounter? So what we found was that through engagement with these constellations of practice and through the APConnect programme, was that APs felt that when they were rooted to their values, it led to a series of practices which facilitated collective and individual growth. So these practices had a direct impact upon their work within institutions. And it's this relationship between values, practices, and impulses that became important to understand how wider engagement with external networks that share a common purpose impacted upon individual practice within organizations. And what we did was we came up with a set of core values that we revisited over time, and that we were constantly evaluating as the projects went on, some became more or less important over that period of time. But these became the 5 key values that we felt were necessary to support APs in realizing their vision. So these values were often felt implicitly within their engagement with constellations, and it was within these constellations that APs felt that they were in spaces where they could draw strength and confidence to implement their vision. But it was also used as kind of a yardstick for AP's own practice and their own decision making. So being rooted to these values and being constantly aware of them in their everyday practice supported collaboration and creativity. And being rooted to these values led to a series of practices. And these practices became implicit to the inner workings, I guess, of the APConnect programme during year 3. And this opportunity to step outside of their organizational context became centrally important for APs to innovate. It created a strong sense of energy, which APs brought back to their roles. And these very open, agile, flexible spaces led to increased feelings of autonomy and agency, and it facilitated positive risk-taking and creativity. And what we found was that APs were becoming creative theorists. So that's a term I'm borrowing from my colleague and co-conspirator, Dr. Colin Forrest, who led the evaluation work with us. But as creative theorists, they were able to draw on a pool of expertise to help them to innovate within their own organizational contexts. And where colleges also embraced the value of external knowledge exchange, new cultures were more easily established, which led to these values and practices being embedded in institutional contexts as well. And so these practices, as you know, APs got used to engaging with these ideas and these practices on a regular basis, they became almost impulses. And this is a term that I'm borrowing from fellow co-evaluator Maria, who described the concept of the impulse as representing almost an instinctive response to interacting with constellations. So these practices became second nature, inspired them to embed new ways of working within their organizations. And in some cases, this might lead to the redevelopment of organizational policies, or it might be approaches to mentoring and coaching or observation, or in others, it led to cross-institutional collaborations to inform professional development. So you might see ad hoc or practitioner-led CPD events, which were intra-organizational and involved external collaboration. And in all cases, these impulses were perceived as instinctive, as authentic, and as representing increased agency felt by APs in their role. So really speaking to that question we identified for ourselves in terms of the conditions needed for APs to thrive in their practice, I guess. However, what we did find was that these kind of radical, non-linear, non-hierarchical structures that we find within the constellations was sometimes met with institutional or organizational structures where cultures were more embedded within rigid and inflexible architectures. So this represented a challenge to some APs who felt that their influence was sometimes constrained just by where they sat within the organization. Within these institutional architectures, which is often, in terms of the AP, a little bit complex because some APs are maybe closer to practice and have a majority or nearly full teaching workload alongside relief for the AP role, and others occupy more management positions. But it didn't really matter where the AP sat within their organization. It was the inflexibility of the structure that they were working with that represented the challenge. And Sammy came up with this metaphor of a tree to reflect the rigidity of that structure, that the AP was able to switch the lights on in dark corners, was able to contribute to innovation, but sometimes that tree, or that very strong metaphor of the tree, represented the challenges associated with trying to make those innovative practices more widely accepted across the organization. So what we identified was that in some cases, organizations needed to rethink where the AP sat and how flexible the AP was in being able to achieve their vision. So this was reflected in some of the challenges that were experienced by APs, and it was directly to do with where they were positioned across organizational contexts. So like I said, sometimes occupying leadership positions, others as coaches and mentors alongside full-time teaching roles. And it meant that APs could influence, but only within kind of their sphere of reference, I guess, or that within their frame of reference. So no matter where they were, whether it was further up the tree or further down the tree, they still experienced some level of challenge. So, for example, while APs in leadership positions might be more able to affect policy change, such as observation policies or processes, the fact that they were less close to practice meant that they struggled to build trust with teaching staff. And it was strongly felt in the co-evaluation team that APs should be close to practice to build those relationships. But then where they were close to practice, it meant that they often struggled to influence higher up that hierarchy, higher up that tree, meaning that it took longer to get things done in some cases. So this means that when APs occupy a fixed position, they're hindered at whichever level of the institution that they're working in. However, APs are agile, they're creative, and they're very flexible, and they're learning a lot of these skills by engaging with the constellations. So this allowed them in lots of ways to slip through the cracks in the hierarchy where they could kind of shine a light and affect change. So they could start putting those lights on the Christmas tree in some cases where they found support for their work. And we observed that one of the most important aspects of the APConnect program was the ability to seek out advice and develop a skill set which allowed them to sell their ideas and to build relationships up and down that hierarchy. And as a result, the values and practices of the constellations found their way into spaces that APs managed to get themselves into. And one of our key considerations is how APs can get into the rooms they need to get into and be part of the conversations that they need to be part of in order to lead effective change that is more expansive, that reaches more people than where they can currently. So in seeking to answer our question that we posed initially, which is how does the community of practice support APs to navigate the challenges we encounter, we identified that the influence of the APConnect programme creates a space in which possibility thinking can take place. The AP, through developing this outward-facing element to their role, is supported in navigating institutional boundaries and allows APs to bring the outside inside into their institutional role. So you see that reflected in the diagram you see on the slide there, where the AP is operating across these very porous and flexible boundaries with the skills that they need to be able to shine light in dark corners. The AP necessarily then occupies this space between inside and outside, and it supports them to develop as critical thinkers and as influencers. So where institutions present solid barriers, APs move in and out of these boundaries, and there becomes little distinction really between what APs are doing outside of the institution when they're engaging in these knowledge exchange networks and what they're doing inside their institution as well. So engagement with this outward-facing work, such as amplification or knowledge exchange activities, becomes more than just a bonus or an add-on to their role. It's actually quite essential part of their practice, but also their professional identity. So what we concluded was that when we can come to define the AP role as what they do or what they don't do, what they do have is a unique position between these spaces. And that's the very thing that supports innovation and quality improvement within the organizations, is their ability to be able to seek outside or external support for the work that they're doing in-house. So to keep those lights on, I guess in order to be able to capitalize on the APs as they're at their most effective, it's important for those who lead APs to be able to shift their mindset when getting to grips with this role in practice, by acknowledging and valuing their ability to shape-shift across organizational boundaries. And flexibility is essential in this, so creating conditions in which APs are able to influence at all levels of an organization and are able to access the right people for the right purposes easily. So facilitating advanced practice requires APs to be operational at multiple levels, and it requires them to have a set of skills to complement this, from influencing change on the organizational level to working in partnership with tutors to develop their capacity in teaching and learning. And this can sit uncomfortably with traditional college structures. But if we reflect on teaching and learning as core to college business, it is important that the impact of the AP work is felt across all levels of an organization. Every organization, of course, has its own priorities and needs, and in this sense, instead of thinking of the AP role as a set of job descriptors, it might be better to think of an AP as having a set of flexible working practices, because it's this agility that allows the AP to effect change where needed and switch those lights on. So what we've concluded is that APs need that space to innovate, and to do this effectively, their engagement with wider knowledge exchange networks needs to be treated as essential. Engagement with wider networks also ensures that they are learning constantly and that they can take this learning back to their organizations. So the ability to organize and amplify actually reaps its own rewards for institutional representation, inter-organizational partnerships, and of course, improved teaching and learning. And that's me done, Lou.
Wow, that's fantastic, Christina. Obviously, I was one of the co-evaluators myself. I was involved, with presenting in different ways the co-evaluation, including you and I have been interviewed by Australian podcasters recently.
Yeah, internationally famous.
Absolutely, as well as being on the Joy FM radio station. But actually, I hadn't seen you put it all together like that, and that was really powerful. So for everybody listening, that is, I don't think there could be a better way of exploring and introducing what advanced practice is in actual reality as defined by advanced practitioners themselves, talking to other advanced practitioners. And we have one other research project that we ran last year that we're still in the process of writing up, and that was the AP digital research that many of you will have contributed to and your teams will have contributed to as part of a survey. And I know there are people here today who were part of the Spotlight Thinking Environment focus groups as well. And that focused on APs, the conditions for APs to thrive as well as survive during the COVID year. And the outcomes are absolutely in line with the co-evaluation. There was nothing that jarred. That sense of APs as being a very special role. So a role which has movement, a role which has wriggle room and space to dance. And one of the really interesting things I think about that, the AP digital research, was that it returned 44 different job titles for advanced practitioner. Only about a third of the people who filled it in, just over a third, were actually called that. And we recognize that in organizations, people, have all sorts of different job titles. And smaller organizations in particular may not necessarily have a particular grade, which is advanced practitioner, but they will have individuals who do that whole thing. You know, the going outside, the drawing on, the sort of constellations, the bringing back the skills palette, and then the impulses to decorate the Christmas tree within the organization. So please, if you're thinking about yourself or colleagues coming on the program, don't let job titles limit. We are interested in people who make things happen. And Helen, you're absolutely right. The values, the phrases, the descriptions. When we talk to APs, they didn't talk back to us in FE speak. They talked back to us in values speak. Advanced practice is values led, and we knew it. Of course, we could see it for years, but we absolutely nailed the evidence of that this year. Christina talked about possibility thinking, and everywhere now around us, though, whether organizations have caught up with this or not, people are thinking differently about leadership in the world and what that means, and are thinking about values leadership, and are thinking about constellations rather than fixed teams or even communities. And Jenny asked the question, and Lynn did as well, why constellations? And I replied with that quote from Rebecca Solnit: the stars or the Christmas tree lights we are given, the constellations we make. So it's how we join and operate with others, fellow travelers for a while, sharing ideas, energy, sharing inspiration, and then our paths will diverge, and that's totally cool. And we will have our feet in different constellations, to mix a metaphor, at any one time, and we'll be pollinating that practice across education and across all contexts of FE. And that's what happens in practice. So a team is fixed and the ideas circulate. Even if that team gets on really well, and perhaps particularly if the team gets on really well, it becomes an echo chamber. Constellations move and shift and go where the work needs to be done and go where the energy is. And we've got loads that we can share with you to read around that concept. We're not the only ones talking about it. Simon Sinek, who I'm sure many of you have heard of, he is promoting a guy called Matthew Barzun, whose book, The Power of Giving Away Power, is currently incredibly influential, and he talks about constellations. Former Chancellor Gordon Brown, his recent, I think it's seven Things to Change the World, something like that. His recent book, he is talking about collaborating in this sense, about anti-competitive practice, about co-production in the way that we have seen on the AP project. And those positive, affirmative ethics that drive APs, they're everywhere too. I've just got hold of Oliver Burkeman's book, The Antidote, Happiness for People Who Can't Stand Positive Thinking. I'm looking forward to that. But that's the sort of spirit of advanced practice, as is Rutger Bregman's humankind. So this is, you know, okay, we're here, we are where we are, how can we make it better? And we don't mean better just in the outcomes-based sense, though we do mean that. We believe in advanced practice, that you can achieve those outcomes, those KPIs, that bottom line, and you can do it through values-led practice. And your advanced practitioners are the people who will do that. So I'm going to show you now it's a wonderful, but perhaps not quite as pretty slide, if this comes up okay. Can you see this? Christina, could you tell me?
I can see currently the StreamYard kind of platform, so I can't see a slide.
Yeah, I'm just bear with me a minute. I might need to close it down and open it up again. You may have spotted me nipping about while Christina was on to try and get my slide up and being a little confused about that. So let me try again. It's a good job I don't get too freaked about this, isn't it, really? Yeah, I am struggling. So I'm going to talk you through the structure. I was going to show you a very complex slide anyway, and I was in two minds. So I'm going to talk to you about the structure of what is on offer next year. APConnect is bigger and it is broader and it is even more tentacular. So it's a gianter octopus than it's been even in previous years. And because of that, we are going to staggering our recruitment. One of the changes for us this year, which has been a challenge, is that previously people have been able to go to things on different tentacles, if you like, different streams, and we've been able to count them twice. This year, we can only count people once, but don't worry, we've worked really hard on our capacity to make sure that everybody can do anything they want to do as far as is possible. And if we reach a point of saturation, then we'll just be really honest about that, but we are feeling good about it. The constellations are just one element. So the constellations were largely involved in the co-evaluation, which Christina has talked to us about. You will have got that flavour from them of the work that they do. Constellation B, Constellation C, no Constellation A for historical reasons, and it's just too boring a story to tell you, really. Constellation B are people who are maybe new to advanced practice or new to the programme, or on their journey to advanced practice. So it looks like more conventional CPD in the sense that there is an online set of modules that we're asking people to complete. And everyone who comes on Constellation B will do a small scale quality improvement research project as well. Loads of support with this, but they're working on something very concrete within their organisation with others. And they become part of a community. We use Slack as a digital community that works incredibly well. And this year, for the first time, Constellation B, Constellation C will be mixing together because we're really hoping that teams will come along and that people will slot into whichever constellation works best for them. Constellation C is much more freeform. Constellation C people, though we can make exceptions, will generally have been involved in the programme before, and their job is to amplify advanced practice, to be able to support their work and the work of others, to tell the world, as we've done this year, what advanced practice is about. Everyone in C will also be working on a project, but they will already have been working on that project, we anticipate. This is, you know, part of what they do. And again, will be in the online space, but you will see them everywhere, just like last year. And perhaps, Joss, you could drop into the chat the link for the reflections from AP 3, just a flavour, really, of the amazing work that people did. You will see Constellations people on podcasts, in tests, writing in books, writing in magazines, appearing at conferences, putting on conferences and events. So that's the constellations. We are looking for 150 people across both those constellations, and we are particularly looking to get Cs in place because we know that they will just really help us drive this forward, and that Cs will be able to work with their own colleagues and communities to bring them on board in the program. Then we have got, in our style, of more conventional advanced practice modules. So the thinking environment, which many of you I think are familiar with, a set of processes for independent thinking, which is what we all want. Completely revolutionary when it comes to meetings and planning as well as pedagogy. So that is module 1. We're running it in starting next week. Actually, that's full. We've got a waiting list, and then we will be starting again come early autumn to run other modules of that. Module 2 is develop. Oh, I think I've done them the wrong way around. I think that's module 3 this year. Apologies. Module 1, developmental observations. I'm sure people are completely familiar with the brilliant work of Professor Matt O'Leary at Birmingham City University, and many of you too will be really familiar with Joanne Miles. They work together on module 1. Module 2, leading AP teams. These were all modules from last year, incredibly successful in terms of their evaluation. And we are offering, as well as the standalone modules that people apply to come on, and these are all free, everything's free this year in APConnect. We're also offering in-house customized modules as well. So just get in touch with Alison in the office, alison@touchconsulting.net, if you're interested in bringing anything in-house. We've got limited capacity, but decent capacity to do that. So that's as we had last year, constellations and the CPD pathway. That's what we're launching so far. And then we're going to work towards a September launch for 2 really exciting new strands of APConnect. Practitioner-led FE professional learning. This is the all-new singing and dancing combination. So this is a marriage made in heaven of what used to be the PDG groups and the AP-led networks. So we are looking for 30 organisations to run an AP team to offer some combination of action learning sets. Ideas rooms are completely on the table here. If you don't know what an ideas room is, look out for stuff from us about ideas rooms because they're brilliant, and or knowledge exchanges. And there is £3,000 for each organisation who takes this up. We're looking at smaller organisations, perhaps combining. There's all sorts of opportunities, and we're just putting that together at the minute, the application process for that. There'll be a Constellation C lead for each one, and that Constellation C lead will be supported through all that's on offer for the constellations. So really exciting there. Keep an eye open for that. And then further, the 4th strand, really train the trainers in FE professional learning. We're looking at 2 cohorts of teaching people to do what we do, essentially. Teaching people this new possibility thinking approach to professional learning. Again, we're just finalising the detail of that, and we'll be looking at September launch. As well as all of this, we wrap it up, of course, as a whole. It's a holistic package. So there is going to be support for QTLS and ATS. We work closely with the Society of Education for Education and Training. We work closely with other organisations, projects, grassroots across the whole of the FE sector, particularly, for example, around the Festival Fridays, which will continue this year, which is a whole day full of opportunities that anyone involved in this can come along to and get involved with, including running workshops themselves. We're delighted to be in partnership with PD North for the Festival Fridays, which will be run by Chloe from PDN. And we are also delighted to be running a public ideas room on Friday in collaboration with the collective Joy FE. We're working with equality training and the BayMed network again this year on an equalities recruitment and mentoring package. Hugely appreciated. I don't know, Mars, if you want to put a note in the chat about, you know, your experience of that this year. And our cross-cutting themes, maths, English and ESOL, ed tech and digital, and well-being, of course. And before I finish, and I am going to finish, I'm going to say that everything we design, we also now design through that practice of values. So practices of care and kindness, of solidarity, of openness, of trust, and of equality. So when we're doing our planning and thinking, which we continue to do with APs and with the rest of the team, we are implementing those practices. There's no point if we don't walk the talk, no point at all. And in March, we will be again running one of our fabulous events to the National Advanced Practitioner Conference. It'll be in its 4th year. We always try and do something different and something exciting. So, you know, at the end of the year, what will we have to say there if we learn as much as we did this year? So I'm going to shut up now and I'm going to have a look through the comments. You might have questions for me. You might have questions for Christina. Lynn is saying that she loves the more tentacular giant octopus and it's like pink. It's not like black or anything. Helen's loving the energy, which is fantastic. I think so, Beata. So if I just highlight Beata's comment, so looking forward to year 4 as it feels like the journey, adventure and excitement will continue to amplify collaboration, energy and growth. We didn't set out to be intentionally anti-competitive. That's what we have learned from APs. We have learned from APs that sharing is really caring, like genuinely, that collaborative working, the 12 dancing princesses, not the Cinderella, absolutely. Yes, so what else? Yes, that's right, Jenny. So can the research projects, Joss has already replied to this. We've got focused support for ATS. And we just didn't have anybody who wanted support with QTLS last year, but if we do, then we offer that support and we make sure that everything aligns. So the modules which have been developed by Lynn and Rob Taylorson, each of the modules for Constellation B has has an ATS section at the end that shows you where, you know, you've met the requirements of ATS. But of course, Constellation C, not doing the modules, they may well, you know, also they will be doing work which contributes to that and we help them, you know, do that cross matching. And the Festival Friday ATS sessions will also be open to people from different parts of the octopus. Catherine, hi Catherine, the answer is generally no, but we do have a connections day. For the constellations, the answer is generally no. But there is a connections day for anybody joining C, which I hope you'd consider, and that's on the 7th of July. And the connections day for Constellation B, the first one is the 29th of September, because we don't expect to have all our Bs in place till September. And the second one, because we get Bs together twice, is the 12th of January. They'll all be online. The CPD modules, obviously, they are certain dates and you have to attend those dates, again online. And again, the in-house modules, we will negotiate with you. When it comes to the other stuff, the dates will emerge, if that makes sense. But it's certainly not the sort of program where you rock up every Monday at 3 p.m. Absolutely not that. Kindness, you're right, Paul, is infectious. Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you, Stacey. I'm going to just highlight that for the minute. So hopefully, Catherine, that answers your question. Yes, Stacey, loving the extra strand with organisations. This is what APs have absolutely told us. To put the Christmas tree lights on and keep them on. It's so important that there's a team doing that, as well as there being organisational support for that. I mean, we ask every applicant for constellations to be endorsed by, you know, someone more senior at the organisation. Often that happens in theory. Sometimes it doesn't happen in practice. So when there's a few people, we're thinking there's a critical mass. And it's much more likely that the actual culture change will happen within the organisation. Jackie Rosser, I don't know if you're still here, but certainly at Chesterfield, that's a great example of the critical mass of people coming along actually over a few years and actually becoming more, taking on more responsibility for change within the organisation, and then others coming through the programme after them. Come on then, you must have more questions, because I did a whistle stop through that. Well, hopefully people are thinking. We've not just silenced them, Christina. Is there anything else that you want to say? Because I think that's probably as well, an early time for you seeing the whole thing laid out, because you've worked on various bits of it.
Yeah, no, I think it looks great, and I just wanted to pick up again what Paul said around core values. I think what's really interesting about what you've said about the program design for this year is that you are, as a team, holding yourself accountable to the values that we identified as part of the co-evaluation. And I'm thinking about how that might transfer into organizational contexts as well. So the organization strands that you're going to be doing and how a value is going to be carried into that space as well. So that's really exciting prospect, isn't it?
It totally is. Absolutely. It feels like some organizations are really, really shifting already. But it feels like this is the tipping point. That point at which advanced practice becomes endemic, becomes part of what FE is. It feels like this year might be it. So some practical questions. Jenny's asking what sort of research projects, practitioner inquiry, small scale projects contributing to quality improvement, and we encourage people to, look at the ethics of that, so it does become a research project, and the output would be whatever you want it to be. So last year, some people produced a podcast to talk about their project. Some people were invited onto somebody else's podcast. They might have written an article for Tess. They might have done a blog. I don't think we had just project reports. It was stuff that everything produced was really engaging. There was some quite visual stuff. Someone did a tone poem. So there's all sorts of, I think I'm conflating your question, Jenny, with Catherine's. The evidence is whatever you want to produce. And we support you in that as well. And you see what other people are doing. For Constellation B, we are asking for some sort of reflective account about project outcomes, but also your journey. For Constellation C, it's much broader. Some people have chosen to, so many different ways in which people have chosen to amplify their practice, to be honest, in Constellation C. But you can get ideas from the reflective accounts, and we will pop a link in chat to those. Andrea's asking about when the applications will be open for the September strand, and Joss has put the dates there, opening 7th of July. So we launched the professional learning pathway at the Constellation C event. Think, Alison, don't think about the September strand. By September strand, do you mean the practitioner-led professional learning pathway, or do you mean the train the trainers? Don't think about either of them separately. They will emerge from Constellation C, if that makes sense. So if you are interested in either of those strands and you're going to be the person leading that, sign up for Constellation C, and we'll be recruiting from there and probably other places as well. But it's the Constellation C people that we look at driving all those things forward. And we do the clever work behind the scenes, which is about, well, when I say we, I literally don't mean me. Somebody who's got skills and talents that I haven't got will do the clever stuff behind the scenes to make sure that wherever we count you as a KPI, you know, contributes to the whole, if that makes sense. So you don't have to worry about applying for this and not that. But yeah, come along with us now as Constellation C. And if we need to expand that 75 to make sure that everybody is supported, think of the constellations as like, it's like the nurturing place. We don't want anybody out there running networks or running a train the trainers who also doesn't have the support of the constellations. So if that constellation needs to expand to make that possible, we will do that as well. These are great questions. Be as precise as you want. Obviously, there's some of the finer detail that we've not worked out yet because it is so huge and we only got the go ahead last week. So we're still working through some of that, but we will, you know, let you know when we'll know. Thanks, Joss, for the dates. Again, we just keep circulating these. There's a central place where if you go to the Touch Consulting website, I'm just going to drop the link in. You will see, you know, blogs about this. So Susie, applied for Constellation C. When might you hear back? Closing date is the 30th. So we will let you know. My bad, because I think I forgot to put we have received it receipt on, but we have received it. We're looking at all the applications and we will let people know on the 30th or shortly after the 30th. So Joss is throwing loads of dates in now, but believe you me, we will keep telling you these. Keep watching on social media, hashtag APConnect, to see all the marketing that's going out. You can always message me on social media or email. Don't email me. You might be waiting a while. Consulting.net. Yeah, I think, Joss, you know, I can be dodgy with dates, but 30th of June is the closing date for this round of applications. If we don't have, we probably will have 75 Cs, but if we don't have 75 Cs, then we'll open it up again. But I think we will have 75 Cs, but we won't have all our Bs in place. The bees that we do have, we'll be doing some work with over the summer. So if people are interested in bee, please get applying, because it means we're in touch, you're in the Slack space, and although the Connections Day won't happen until the end of September, Constellation Bee yes. So this is what I'm saying, Jenny. Closing date 30th of June for this first round. We don't expect to have all our bees in place. Where you say with ATS, you're not automatically enrolled on ATS by applying to the Constellation. You would have to do that separately, or whoever would have to do that separately. But we will be appointing, what's the word? We will be welcoming some of the bees and probably all of the Cs after the 30th of June. But keep in touch with us, keep asking these questions. Honestly, me and Joss are in this up to our necks, and it is still big to hold in the head. It's still a lot to hold in the head. Any more questions for Christina about the co-evaluation? Oh. You're welcome. Honestly, Jenny, brain, you know, we're in charge of this tanker and the brain gets mush sometimes. So keep asking. We never get impatient about questions. Yep, C's get the first dibs. People who are already C, who, you know, come on to us as C's, get first dibs on the practitioner-led professional learning. If we don't recruit all 30 centres from C, we'll, you know, we will put the message out again. Helen, I can't answer that because it would absolutely depend how many people are coming on and what strand they're coming on to. So, for example, you know, it's very clear with the CPD that I think each of the CPD modules is around a day and a half. So that's what you commit, but obviously there's asynchronous work to do as well. So we want people to be thinking and trying things out. You know, there's quite a gap between sessions so that you can be practicing stuff. On the constellations, Constellation B, There are 8 modules which don't take like huge amounts of time, but do take some dedicated time. I would say on the constellations, a couple of hours a week. You may choose to do a lot more, but I would say, you know, that's probably that. But of course, it's asynchronous. People can do a lot and then not very much. We do ask that everybody has some contact with the Slack space once a week. We don't chase people. We don't send emails. Nothing happens by email unless it's contractual. Everything happens in Slack. If people email us, we'll direct them to Slack. And it's economies of scale, and it's also building a community and building trust. Unfortunately, ETF were unable to support us in funding a second round of co-evaluation, and we're all really gutted about that. Their money that they get from the DFE also has conditions, and it all has to be spent on delivery. Now that, I'll come back to you, Jenny, that does not mean that if you wanted for your project, Stacey and Sinead, to do co-evaluation work, now you know how to do it, then that does not mean you can't do that. That can be your project. And it reminds me that I did miss something. I'm so sorry, Christina. There is a module 4 this year for the first time, which is actually doing a co-evaluation. And Christina and our colleague, Colin Forrest, are going to be running that module. So you can learn how to do the co-evaluation. And wouldn't it make sense if people coming on that course were also on the constellations and then running a co-eval? So we can't make you want to do that, but we hope you will. Slack, Jenny, is the digital platform that we use where everybody is. So I don't know what you have at your organizations. If you have teams, then, you know, it's a bit like everybody getting together on Teams, though I think it's better. It's everybody in one space. So communication's not happening here, there and everywhere, so that 30 people are not emailing Alison with the same question. We all communicate on Slack. Yes, thank you, Joss. You spotted my deliberate mistake there. So hopefully people have got that as well. The co-evaluation was really superb. And I mean, that's a practice that could be in every FE organisation up and down the country, just as part of, yeah, future. Because in itself, Christina, it's trust building, isn't it? It builds, it doesn't just recognise those practice values, it builds them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still in its very early stages. So I saw Sinead and Stacey asking about, you know, what co-evaluation work is going to take place, and me and Colin are kind of still working up what that's going to look like. But there's definitely going to be a module where we invite people who want to almost test using the co-evaluation model in their own organizations or as part of projects that they're doing. We're hoping to be able to give some kind of practical advice and a tool that you can use. And what I think is interesting about the co-evaluation approach is that it is a trust building model, but also that, I mean, what was interesting when we were on Joy FM with Sammy, Stacey, was that you were talking about how it helped you to be able to articulate what you want and need from your work as well. So there's something really empowering about being part of a co-evaluation as well, because it's both it's a research method and it's a process all in one, I think, isn't it? I don't know how you feel about that, Lou.
Yes, it is. It's a research. It's researching and doing all at the same time, and I think that's such a key thing that advanced practice brings to the sector. Doing the thing, thinking about the thing, you know, bringing the circles of evaluation literally into the organization, changing the culture of how we plan and do things, and then also talking about it. And that's what we've not had before. It's only 4 years since I was involved in a £20 million project funded by the DFE that talked to community educators in adult community education, and literally nobody could tell us about their practice. The only stories they could tell us were about learners. And of course, those stories are important, but it's exactly as though we'd lost our voice as educators. So student voice, yeah. Leadership voice, yeah. Policy voice, yeah. But educator voice, no. And we've refound our voices through advanced practice, and that's just magnificent. I mean, that really sort of summarizes what it's all about for me. So we've got 5 minutes left. Is there anything finally that you want to hear from us here and now? We're working so hard to make a start, so we're almost like unrolling the carpet as we go along, really. That's excellent, Helen, and I'll come back to you. We're rolling the carpet as we go along, which is why we don't know all the detail, but it felt incredibly important to make a start before the summer. We've got people around pretty much, you know, right, except the last couple of weeks in August. Nobody wants us the first 2 weeks in September, we know that. So, you know, there'll be things that are happening on Festival Fridays. They'll be a bit quieter before September, but there will still be the stuff happening there to bring people together. We know that people break up at different times, take their holidays at different times. And we also know that we've got colleagues who don't take summer holiday at all. Yes, we're exactly like Wallace and Gromit, putting down the rails before the train win. That is us. So we're going to be there. And on that subject, we know that the people who we attract to APConnect are not representative of our sector fully. We know and we understand last year was a really challenging year. We didn't have anyone from secure estates, from prisons. We did in AP Digital, but we didn't like on the constellations. We had very few people from independent training providers. We had, you know, our ACL colleagues. We can always do more. You know, that's where my heart is. We had a few land-based colleges, but no one from the 2 remaining specialist colleges completed the programme. We're wanting to reach those tentacles out into all the contexts and settings, into apprenticeships, into work-based learning. And so if you can help us with that, take the message out, please will you do that? And we also know that not entirely, and it's getting a bit better, but that the ethnicity of our cohorts does not reflect the sector. We know that we've got challenges around Black and ethnic minority leadership in the sector that, you know, we're all aware of, but at AP level, we're not getting colleagues of colour coming along. So that invitation, it is an invitation. We're not just waiting for you to turn up. It's hard to find the language around these appeals, but you may be able to help us with this. And we also know that 10% of the people who responded to the AP Digital survey define themselves as having a disability, and it's only the brilliant Equalities Mentoring Programme that has opened up conversations around disability in APConnect. So again, we know that we can do more, and that we need you. We need the sector as a whole to be reaching where Twitter doesn't go, reaching where our newsletter doesn't go, reaching the people who've never heard about us and who, you know, we can offer this wonderful set of opportunities to. And we have that additional equalities mentoring support with the BAMED network and with Mole Chapman, Dr. Laura Chapman of Equality Training, who is a disability activist. So, you know, once we get people here, we can support, but, you know, we can't always get people here. So please help us with all of that. Any final questions then? Christina, any final thoughts? And Joss, pop your thoughts, please, in the chat if you've got any. Can't resist getting Wallace and Gromit up there.
I'm very excited, and I've just realised I just when you asked me that question, I realised I wasn't quite present in the moment, and I was being distracted by the fact that we're both wearing a lovely pair of earrings.
That's cool. We are octopus with earrings. No, we totally are. I'm really sorry I couldn't show you the slide. There was a lot on that slide, and hopefully I've been able to spell it out in words, and you get the sense of just excitement. And if you haven't worked with us before, we are extraordinary, I think, and as a team. And when I say team, I mean all the APs. You know, everybody involved really loves this work. really loves this work. And that's the practice of care, isn't it? And that really comes across. So we hope you'll join us. Thank you for coming today. Really appreciate it. Keep asking us questions as they occur to you. And Christina, thanks so much. I loved that presentation. Thanks, Joss, as well for being on that. See you, everybody. Have a lovely evening.
Bye, everyone. Bye.